topic that's often not discussed because it comes with a lot of hesitation, stigma. So I really do want to salute the invisible patient, and this may be something that we'll get into a little more during the conversation as to why why we've used these phrases of, who are we saluting? Why? What is invisible in this dynamic? And who is the patient that we're caring for? So I'd like to welcome you all with that. I'm Dr. Jayashree Das Gupta. I'm the co-founder and project director of Samvedna Care. And we're an organization that provides mental health support and dementia care services. We provide trained caregivers for people who are living with dementia. We provide a lot of support for families who are on the caregiving journey, as well as mental health support and services for people who have various kinds of psychological issues. And today I'm absolutely honored to be joined by three people with immense lived experience of caregiving. And I'm going to, turn to each of them one by one and ask them to introduce themselves before we get into some discussions on caregiving. So maybe I could just begin with the person who's on first popping up on my screen, Mr. Tapasan. If I could just request you to share a couple of lines about yourself as an introduction.
Hi, my name is Tapas, of course. I've largely been working in the space of content. I was the chief content officer of Radio Mirchi that's almost for about 30 years. Right now, I'm an independent media consultant for a Swiss-based organization, but I still work in the space of content primarily. So through and through in media. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you for joining us. Could I turn to Ms. Anubha Mukherjee?
Yeah. Hi, Jayashree. Really a privilege to be here. And thanks to Samvedna for holding our hands, as I was saying just before we got started, for many, many years. And from a distance, remotely, have attended your webinars and have shared many a times. But this is the time when you asked us to share our experiences. I'm an associate professor in English in a college in Delhi University. And I have shared the link for today's invite with many people. And as you pointed out, the stigma associated not only for the patients who go through mental health issues, but the people who take care of them and the toll it takes on them. I think it could not have been a better platform than this to come and join and share our experiences. Thank you so much again.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us. And if I could quickly turn to Neeta Agrawal, who I know has you're going to be here with us for a while today to share some experiences as well.
Okay, so hi. So I am not a trained professional. I'm a mother of a special, differently abled girl. She has Down syndrome and she's 35 years old, 36 years old. And so I will only talk about my experience as a parent. I can tell you about my journey from the moment when I heard that I have a special child and I will have my entire life to be taking care of her. And it's been a very enriching journey, I would say. And so I have some very positive things to talk about and share. And I'm really happy that I'm getting this opportunity. I've never done this before. So for me, it's the first time. And so do excuse me if I don't say the right things or I'm not able to put across my thoughts very clearly. And maybe you can actually, navigate me through this conference that we're having. But yes, I'm really happy to be here and to be able to share my experiences.
Thank you for joining us. And at the outset, I do want to say that when we're talking about caregiving, as anyone who's, there's a very famous quotation that we're all caregivers at some point. We've all provided care for somebody in our lives. There is no right or wrong way. It is a journey, it's a process. And one of the reasons why we think it's important to have these conversations is because we learn from each other. So I think that's the way that I would want us all to start this conversation. And maybe we could we could start on a on really on a note, and kind of I want to actually start with a very neutral thing that I think um everybody I'm going to start by asking a very simple question to our panelists as well as to the people who are listening in. I would just like to ask you, what is your favorite song? Sometimes when we all kind of turn to music, most of us do, when we're experiencing some sort of stress or not, just out of curiosity. What is your favorite song? Is that something which you could type it? If you're listening in, type this into the chat. And maybe I could just start with this, ask Mr. Tapasan, what's your favorite song?
Firstly, it's Tapas, not Mr. Tapas. I almost think that my dad's standing behind me when you address Mr. Secondly, of course, and the people who are attending this will tell you it's a very, very unfair question, because particularly for music lovers, it's very difficult to answer this. But in any case, I could just tell you one of my songs which stayed with me for a long time, not because I liked it so much, but because my dad liked it very much. So and this was a very, very cliched song. And, it was a Kishore Kumar song called Pal Pal Dil Ke Paas. And, I have seen him sing that literally, which was enough to drive all of us out of the room. But he would sing it absolutely without any hesitation for a long time. And I think even when he was not well, this is one of the songs which would really cheer him up. So there's a very, very strong association with that song, I would say. Yeah.
That's really great to know. Anupa, what about you? Any song, which you enjoy listening to? Let's put it that way. And
no, I think my memories are like his. We both have come from families who have music was integral to them. So we have grown up listening to Kishore Kumar, besides others, and Kishore Kumar remained a favorite even for my father. And there was this song, "Meri Bhigi Bhigi Si Palko Mein Reh Gaye," from Anamika. He liked it because R.D. Burman sang a Bengali version of it, Mone Pore Ruby Rai. And when he was beginning to forget everything, he would perk up whenever I would play that song or any other Kishore Kumar songs that he could, and he would connect to it. So our song repertoires are like that. So I think we began by Kishore Kumar, and towards the end, when things became very difficult with my father and later with my mother-in-law, I was mostly singing "Heer to badi sad hai," and try and dance to it. Aajkal very mad hai. So,
what about you, Neeta?
So honestly, this is a very tough question. I cannot tell you which is my favorite song. I'm more of a dancing person. So the minute I am stressed, my music is on, and I
dance.
just love dancing. So that's what I really do.
Yeah.
But if you really want me to tell you some particular song, I would say there is this very old English number called "Those Were the Days," my friends, and I love that because. At some point in my life, I'd lost somebody, and I would sing that song a lot every time to myself, and relive my memories with my friend. So I guess that's one of my favorite songs. But yes, our house is always full of music, so it's all kinds of songs. It's very difficult. You have your moments, and you have your moments for old indie numbers, and you have your moments for, the dance Bollywood music. So it's all over.
Can I just jump in with a with a very funny anecdote I remember? Because you asked songs, and favorite really is just too difficult to choose. But it's always the association which makes the song special, or
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's a friend of mine, and she lost her mother a very long time when she was pretty young. And her mother's favorite song used to be Madhuri Dixit's Dil Dhak Dhak Karne Laga. Okay, that song. Now the thing is that now
It's
that
totally different from the actual.
that's right. Now it's an obnoxious choice to have, but
Yeah.
till date, and it's very funny. If you play that song, she starts crying. And
Yeah.
people around ask her that, we are playing the most obnoxious song you can think of, with Madhuri Dixit and, the pulsating, rhythms of everything. And she's crying, So the point I'm trying to make is that the associations are sometimes so strong that it completely transcends the sensibility of the song itself. The song itself stands for nothing other than what it kind of evinces or generates within you. So I just thought that was very pertinent to the song round that you are really talking about.
No, that's really well put. And I think one of the reasons why we wanted to start with this, and I mean, I see that our participants have also put in some really great, stuff that I personally enjoy listening to a lot. Some of my favorites. And I say again, I totally agree. I don't think if you ask me which is my favorite song, I definitely don't have one. I have many, but there's some great numbers which have been put into our, into the chat that other people also enjoy listening to, and I also do as well. But the reason why we started with this is because something like music evokes a lot of emotions. And uh, caregiving is a process that also evokes a lot of emotions. And I just wanted to kind of turn to each of you and try and ask you to share a bit about your experiences as a caregiver and some of the emotions that this process, this journey really aroused in yourself. So, um, maybe whoever is comfortable to just share a bit about their caregiving experience and some of the emotions that this experience brought out.
You'll have to call out names.
Okay,
All
so maybe
first.
maybe we could go first with you then, Tapas.
Okay. So, the entire, um, there's a very popular word these days called the hack, right? So the hack in this entire thing is in the word patient. And both have to implement that. Both the caregiver and the person you're taking care of. One is the patient, the other has to be patient. you know and that's very central to this entire journey. That's as succinctly that I could really put it, but it's a long journey which touches upon so many things. um, uh, the other thing which I thought was which really makes a difference is the realization that it is an extremely thankless job. As adults, we are very used to being thanked for anything that we do, which we think is good. Not only is it thankless, but also at times your patient may be offensive towards you, may be aggressive towards you. So I think at some point of time you've got to make a switch and say, okay, these are very different people, and you have to recalibrate all your expectations, everything. And I think what it does is it brings out the best in you, because there are only two situations where people can be truly selfless. And one is taking care of a baby, because babies are as thankless as they come. They don't care for your schedule, they don't care for anything. They don't care for, it is not right to soil my diaper here because we are in a party. Nothing. The moment you can extend that equivalence to the patient, I think you have taken a very significant step in your journey. And for me, I think it just happens one fine morning. It is not a gradual process, which was something I learned with a lot of difficulty. It is not something which improves every day. It's just one fine morning that you realize this, and then everything changes. Yeah, for now.
And I think what you really described is almost like accepting control, accepting that you can't change things. It's like that switch that suddenly you've described that suddenly comes on where you've just now accepted you can't change things. You don't have control over the situation. You
Absolutely.
gave the example of a baby.
Yeah.
it's universally accepted that a
True.
baby cannot care for themselves.
Correct.
And that's what makes that
True.
look very different. But I'd like to turn to Neeta, because you started with saying that you have a very different set of caregiving experiences, and I'd just
Yes,
like to ask you
yes.
to share some of your thoughts here.
So in my case, it's a very different set, and honestly, for me, cannot say it's thankless, because it's just the opposite of that. And for me, it's been a journey where it has been, yes, there is a lot of caregiving and caretaking, but it has also been an experience of learning for me. And what I have learned through my journey of being a parent to Varuni, my daughter's name is Varuni, I realized that yes, I've had my share of being low and being miserable, and wanting to be this hero mother, but not being able to reach that. But it's also taught me so many things towards life, and I've always seen so much joy in seeing my daughter achieve the goals that we both set up for. That I just feel like it's been a very positive experience in my life. So for me, I would say that the first time when I heard that I have to have a special child, it was very painful, and I went through all the emotions of anger, frustration, and feeling very unconfident.
Neeta, I'm going to ask you to pause there. I'm afraid I think the audio isn't very clear. There's a lot of noise there, but I think I could briefly hear you started with saying that your experience was that it wasn't, you said your caregiving experience wasn't thankless, but at the same time, you also described a lot of emotions. I heard you say that it was quite frustrating and at times, and I think there was quite. I think you really you're describing a lot of turmoil, a lot of ups and downs in your caregiving experience. Okay, so maybe.
Anita, what you could do is, in case the Wi-Fi is unstable, you could switch off the video for a while, because then the audio will be clearer, just in case.
Great. And maybe this is a good time to maybe turn to Anubha, and maybe you could just share some
Yeah.
of your experiences as a caregiver and the emotions that you experienced.
Myriads of emotion. It was a emotional roller coaster, because the disease progresses, and every step of it, there are different challenges, newer challenges. And initially, one was going through it blindly, bringing in all the empathy, all the love. We both were single issues of our parents, and we did not have siblings, and we did not really have a two nuclear set of families, and we got married to each other. We have same set of parents to look after. Husband traveled while I was in the city. So for a long time, I was holding the rudder very stoically, and I thought everything was under control. But gradually, it started falling apart. It started taking a toll on the job scenario for me and for my husband. Then right from feeling frustrated to almost feeling wasted, not having energy to get up and look at another day. Because who has it that we had two parents with full-fledged dementia? My father was Alzheimer's, but he was my pillar of strength for my house for a long time. And then he started falling apart, and my mother-in-law had been always had an autoimmune disease, but she was a gung-ho patient, but she also progressed towards Parkinson and dementia. So yes, roller coaster of emotions. Tapush and I would often talk about it, how we both kept our sanity through it, because there are these work pressures, there are pressures of family obligations of all kinds, because parents may be old and unwell. They wanted certain things to be taken care of. So we had other responsibilities to look at. So many a times we would discuss this and we would say, this is, what would you call it, Tapush? Diminishing returns.
Yeah.
No validation from them because they didn't know better. They were very loving parents, and our lives revolved around them. All our lives we have been with them. We somewhere along the way we decided not to raise a family. So what happened was, they were our friends and family and everything all the time. So um, hence I think the toll was bigger on us. We saw our parents being very kind and empathetic and helpful to everybody. The community thing that you were talking about, which is missing in the West, um, our parents taught us that, community supports. But we were in a city which was pretty community less, friendless. We went out and sought friends. And who were our friends? Our doctors became my friends. And I would go and tell them, if you can be on my speed dial, then I will add your number to my phone. And yes, they willingly, so many of them. And I would send them videos. And those doctors have told me, Hamara time aa raha hai, we will send you videos. So of how we are doing. So a lot of learning on the way, groping through darkness, but a lot of Western platforms, which is what we started talking about right in the beginning. Tapush is a very emotional person. I learned very early that parents cannot be treated as babies or they are not my children. Um, I needed practical hacks. I needed solutions. And my Tapush would say, there is no solution for everything. But I would say we could minimize perhaps. But I spread myself thin, trying to minimize their discomfort. क्या कर सकते हैं अब क्या कर सकते हैं अच्छा let me call this person, let me call that person, can I get a better cot, can we get better dresses for them? This I learned on the way, but I am thankful that I learned so much on the way being on Western platforms through COVID, platforms like Alzheimer caregiver support and End Well, that I can share it with people. But the area that I was not good at was perhaps that asking for emotional support. That I needed shoulders to cry on. We would land up accusing each other. अरे ये तुम ये भूल गए, अरे तुमसे ये नहीं हुआ, अरे ऐसे कैसे हो गया? Then we realized that we have to create buffer systems between the patient, between each other. This is a long, long story, Jayashree. We have been doing it for 12 years and more.
And I really want to thank you for raising so many issues. But you mentioned the word roller coaster. There is, and often I've heard caregivers use this term when they describe their emotions. You spoke about the kind of support and helps that you got, what you found useful, and I'm going to turn. We do have a question in the chat about different tips, and I'm going to turn to you specifically for for your top 5 tips. But one of the things that you mentioned, and which we'd really like to highlight, at Samvena, we understand the importance of providing emotional support for caregivers. And today, this webinar that we're having is really about saluting the invisible patient. And we're really talking about the toll that sometimes caregiving can take on the people who are providing care. Often it's the family members. Majority of care statistics show that it is provided by family members. And we know from the data that we have at Samvedna as well that a lot of this is majority of caregivers are women. We also know from screening camps that we periodically conduct that although people experience caregiver strain and stress, they do not seek help for themselves. They're more ready to seek help for the patient, but they don't realize that in order to provide care well, it can take a toll on you, that it's important that you take care of yourself first. So I just wanted to kind of pause there and bring in the audience a bit, the participants who are staying, that we have some poll questions. Nave, if you could bring up that first poll question for us. And
What's this?
okay, so we'd like you to choose an emoticon that best represents your current caregiving mood. So I know that we have caregivers who have joined us today to listen to our panelists share their caregiving experiences. Which emoticon represents your caregiving mood? So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to respond to that. And I'd encourage everyone who's listening in to just put in their responses.
It's a very interesting question, and I think the I think the options are also quite interesting.
So if I could just request Navya, do you think we could close the poll and share the results? Navya is a senior psychologist at Samvedna. And okay, so that's an interesting result. We have majority of people saying that they're reflective in seeking solutions, which is great. Followed by overwhelmed but pushing through. And I think that that's something which I definitely want to talk a bit more about a little later on. And then of course empowered and ready for challenges. There's a lot of positive emotions there. I saw there was 0 people feeling stressed at the moment, which is fantastic. So I mean, clearly we have a informed audience joining with us, and I think that's one of the reasons why we should share specifically some of the tips that you found useful whilst caregiving. So maybe I could just turn to you both to share your top 5 tips. What helped you through your journeys? That was what helped you, your top 5 tips.
Okay, listicles are always a problem because you have to really think them through. And so so the first one, of course, is okay. So I'm a very, very impractical person. Okay, pragmatism is not my strength. I go through life. I have a very romantic view of life. Okay, so
Yeah, always colorful butterflies.
so it's not something
Yes,
I'm.
that's nice.
So it's not something I'm either I either are proud of or ashamed of. It's just who I am. And one of the things I realized what really helped me is that when you see your parent very, very unwell, and don't forget the reason why you are doing all the caregiving is because you really, really love them. There is no other reason. Okay. Some of us are fortunate enough to financially fortunate enough to have to get on to other options as well. But the reason that we chose to do this firsthand was simply because you love them. Now the problem is that the way the difficult patient is behaving, it's very difficult to preserve the love at that point of time. So one of the most important hacks or tips is that if you can split the two, you know, there are two different people. The one who's lying in bed or on the wheelchair is very different from the person whose idea you have been in love with. I think every time I would walk into the room, I would carry the idea of my mother or my father-in-law or my mother-in-law, whoever, with me, because this is the person I'm doing this for. And sometimes you can't recognize a person who's lying in front of you, but it is the emotion of the person you have in your mind that really, really makes you go through it. So I don't know how to really practice this and kind of be deductive enough to make it sound like a hack, but try it. Try and split it. Try and say that, hey, this is, think of all the best times you have and create that persona, a living persona, and carry that with you. Okay, and then if you are tending to him or her, you'll find it a little easier. That's one. I'll give you one more, which is again the same baby analogy. The day you realize that this, none of your normal expectations on interaction apply to this relationship. There is no thank you, there is no please, there is nothing. Okay, this I think you'll be fine. What happens is that half the time we get disappointed because of our adult expectations. We do something, we whether we like it or not, there is some, even if you don't say thank you, it's just a smile of gratitude. That's what I'm looking for, and I'm desperately looking for that, and I don't get that. The moment I can genuinely put that aside from my expectation landscape, I think things become far, far easier. You cannot go through it clinically. A lot of people say, oh, just go through it clinically. You cannot go through it clinically. You have to be propelled by love to do this very, very difficult work. There is nothing else. And like I said, it sounds like a very romantic hack, but it's the only thing that, well, that's the only thing that worked for me. So yeah.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. And maybe I could just turn to Anubhav for some of your tips, and then we can kind of, summarize this for the people who are listening in. Anubhav, what are some of your tips? What got you through?
Lots of it, yeah. It's those tips are everywhere on the social media. Go for walks, do your yoga, blah 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 blah. But nothing happens at some point of time. You just cannot get up and go. So one routine I and Taposh we had decided upon is between the shift. We got nurses in eventually. We had a staff of 10 between two parents. Don't ask me what were they doing, all the staff of 10. They were essentially providing us. Is Jayashree still on the call?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I suddenly thought we are on our own. so, so one of the things was that between the shifts, the would change between the nurses. We would go out for a cup of coffee, and we would call a friend, and just that 1 hour of getting away to do something, you are maybe venting, sharing. Sometimes the friends are well-meaning, but they don't know how to give you support. They will say the wrong things. They will say ये होता रहता है, ये हमारे साथ भी हुआ था, या look at me how I did this, you guys are floundering, etc etc. So you become socially isolated over a period of time because you don't want to meet certain friends, well meaning, but you don't want to meet them because they don't come with good advices, or they ask you to do more when you are struggling with whatever is. So we would definitely go for a cup of coffee, and taking the ambience, other people, normal life, and come back home. The other hack that really worked for me is listening to a lot of music and doing that 1 hour of walk religiously, irrespective of everything. Looking at happy films, happy movies late in the night. Some happy movie, जबरदस्ती से देखने की इच्छा भी ना हो तो you kind of tune in. These are very practical hacks to do, and most importantly, walking away from any conflict situation or any situation where you are being asked to give more help when you are, as it is, crumbling. Learning to say no, setting up boundaries. These are words I understood much later.
Yeah.
Your own self-love, your self-preservation, you need to have boundaries, no guilt. Learn to say no. Learn to say no to the patient also, because the patient becomes irrational. Patient gets abusive. I was told by my doctor, listen, you have to fix the time of visiting your father and your mother-in-law. You cannot be doing that one after the other. Or separating my mother, who was much more saner and the primary caregiver, from my father, which broke our hearts. But separating them for most hours of the day, uh, so that the impact is less. Uh, Very, very harsh, cruel things that we needed to do, but these were practical hacks so that we stay sane and provide more care. Essentially, take in more oxygen before I give oxygen to someone else.
And I think that's really important. Thank you so much for sharing that, both of you. And before I move to Neeta, what I'd really, maybe just to kind of summarize a couple of things that you've described for, for people who are listening in as well and just joined us. One of the most important things is you described was to remind yourself that this is a role that you're doing because you really love that person, and remembering that that person is, and it's particularly in the case of dementia care, and I know that Neeta will bring in another perspective which we'd very much like to hear, but in the case of dementia where you see a person deteriorate from their former selves, that somewhere that person is still that person, and that's where remembering the good times spent with them becomes so important, because we all spend a lifetime creating different memories, and sometimes and research has also shown that we tend to remember the negative things more quickly. We sometimes, when we're feeling low, misery loves misery, we remember only the negative things more. We have to force ourselves to look for positive things, to tell ourselves to remember the positive times, the good times that we had with that person. So remember that you're in this role because you're doing it for somebody you love. Focus on the positive experiences that you've had with that person. Following a routine came out. It seems that both of you developed a routine. You tried to do things, fit it in. And when we say develop a routine, a lot of times people think it's something that, once you write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it has to be implemented like that. That's not the way anybody can implement a routine. I can't. It's very difficult. Identify 2 things that you would like to do. Start small and build it up. See what works for you. You described how you would go out for coffee, spend time together to get away from things. That's a great routine to follow. It's not something you have to do every day, but you're doing it periodically. So even that is an example of something that you've brought into a routine. Saying no, it's understanding what your capabilities are and accepting that you can't do everything. Sharing the responsibility. Caregiving you described multiple people who are involved in this. It's important to seek help when you need it. So these were just 4 or 5 things that you found useful. Maybe Neeta, I could ask you to share some tips that you found useful in your caregiving experience.
Well, it's more because my experience is very different. It's about a special child. So I think the first thing, I don't know if there's anybody who's on the in the group who's interested in knowing about this, but the first thing that I discovered when I realized that my daughter may not be so academically inclined and may not reach a level where I would have liked her to be. I think for me, it was the first thing was to make sure that she learns the skill of independent living. And that became my focus, and which I realized that because to me, it wasn't really important whether she knows the name of the prime minister of the country, but it was more important that she learns the skills of independent living. So yes, our journey started with making her very independent, and sharing is and creating a support group. I think nothing is more important than that. So, which is what we worked on, me and my husband, having a support group where, like she said, she goes for a cup of coffee. In my case, my daughter can spend a weekend with her friends, and I get the whole weekend off. And that's what we worked really hard on, to ensure that other than me having a support group, my daughter also has a support group where they can spend time together, they can go for coffees together, go for shows and films together. So that has really helped us to face the challenges that I feel So if I want to do something, I know I can pick up the phone and say, can you help me? So just trying to be this.
I think Anita's just dropped off.
Yeah.
But one of the things that she was also describing was being very realistic in the kind of expectations that you have from the person you're providing care for, and having very realistic goals for yourself about caregiving. Maybe whilst till Anita joins back, Navya, could I ask you to share the other poll question that we have for our participants? So we'd like everyone who's listening in to share what is the most challenging aspect of caregiving? What do you find challenging? I'll give you a couple of seconds to respond to that, and I encourage everyone to just put in their responses. Navya, do you think we can share the responses with everyone? So most people have described balancing work and caregiving responsibilities as being particularly challenging, and then navigating emotional strain and burnout, and then we have people who've said that all of it's actually quite complex, and all this, as well as financial challenges, managing physical health of the person, all of these are issues which are challenging. But both of you are working professionals. Maybe I could request both of you to talk a bit about how you managed this balancing act. How did you manage caregiving whilst maintaining very active professional lives? What was it that helped you? Tapas, maybe I could turn to you first.
Okay. So, caregiving has two aspects, the physical aspect and the emotional aspect. Okay. The good thing is that you can you can you can very easily outsource the physical aspect, because that's literally in many ways the easier part, because you can get trained nurses. You can, of course, there is the question of the affordability also. There's no doubt about that. But what
Financial drain is huge, Tapan.
yeah, no. So, but the thing is that 24/7, you are under an emotional pressure. And I would not even call it pressure. Let me just, without hesitating, use the word sadness. Okay. There is a sadness, which is the overarching emotion in your life. Suddenly life becomes very devoid of joy. Like Anubhav was saying, at night we'd try and watch movies. The kind of movies we'd watch at night, Govinda films. Something which is completely so nonsensical. And they're just so the
Sorry, I got dropped off. Sorry.
yeah, sure.
Okay.
So the physical aspect, of course, you were there, and you were also helping out the nurses. The nurses are helping you out, and whatever. It's something that you can still create some kind of a support system around the patient. But the emotional burden is 100% yours, and that's the cross that you need to bear, and that's the one that you need to walk with. As long as you understand that, then suddenly you'll realize that, hey, physical cheezein ho jayengi, kuch na kuch between 2 or 3 of us. So I had a very tortuous schedule. I had to travel a lot. And I did, also because, Anubha took charge at that point of time. She's a fully working professional herself. So, and we really lucked out on our nurses. So we could leave a lot of stuff to them. We're constantly in touch with them, things like that. So as long as one person was in the city, it was fine. But yeah, you were essentially carrying the emotional cross more than anything else.
I, work scenario does get hit. So you are trying to minimize responsibility. You are not trying to avoid responsible positions. Tapush was in a very responsible position. One saw to it that, that there is no damage there. Not that mine was any less, except uh, typically one, the indoctrination in the patriarchal society, that women should and can do it. If you are a professor, you're teaching, perhaps your job gives you those windows. But what are these windows? It comes at a price, because you are again in a space where you are giving to students, to budding students, and you have to give your best. You have to be at your best, but you are not at your best. So it does, it in my case, it became very difficult. I did take a long leave in one particular semester, but what worked out in our favor to some extent, not to a large extent, was COVID, because my traveling husband came back home and he immediately took over most of my caregiving responsibilities, so that I could take my classes unhindered, though there was a space crunch to begin with, but that was also sorted out. uh, and we became a team. So COVID worked out also in terms of the quality of life that we provided to our two mothers, who were then the two remaining inhabitants of our house. And I think we had some beautiful time. One small anecdote. I'm sorry, I'm hogging the limelight. Uh, so this music, as it played an integral part, and they were always very happy. You know how in Bengali families you have ashur, you have bethaks where everybody sings and whatever they little know, they share with each other. I used to play the music, and Tapush was always in the radio industry, but I would be the RJ and I would play their music to them. So one night, my mother-in-law, who was very advanced in her Alzheimer's, she could barely look up, barely walk, very
Parkinson.
fragile, Parkinson related dementia. She sat there listening to all her favorite songs. I played her favorite songs. And then we said, it's very late in the night today. We have broken your routine. Now you have to go and sleep. She wouldn't go. She hung around. And then finally she went, and then she calls me and she says, this is a beautiful story from her. So she says, come here, you know, in the living room, there is Kishorda and Lata Mangeshkar. They came for the Baithak today, and you must see to it that they have dinner before they go. I literally had tears in my eyes, but music does that to you. So we could give time, quantity of time and quality of time with them. Speaking with a person who spoke gibberish, understood hardly anything, but yes.
Beautiful anecdote. Thank you for sharing that. I just want to quickly mention that if we have any questions from the audience, we're very short of time. Please put them into the chat, and we'll try to take up a couple of these through the conversation. I know that a lot of you have shared questions before, and we hope that you've managed to get some of the responses to your questions through the discussion that we've been having. So please feel free to put any questions into the chat before we finish today. Neeta, I'm sorry you dropped off in between.
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you about any other tips that you would have about managing your the work that you're doing as well as your caregiving responsibilities. Any
I
quick
just
tips?
realized that we haven't talked about trust.
Mhm.
So I feel that's a very important aspect in one's life, and trusting people, trusting your friends, your family, your staff, your whoever comes your way is a very, very important aspect. So that's one thing that I learned that, I mean, I have set a bar and I've set a certain standard for the caretaking that I can do. But my expectations of the other person cannot be exactly, that person can't do exactly the way I can do. But I realize that I have to learn to trust, because eventually there will be somebody who will have to take care of her other than me. So if I send my daughter to my friend's house, I know that, or I leave her with my staff, I know that there could be a few things which she may not do the way I would like her to do. But that's where trust comes in, or her siblings. So that's one very important aspect, I think, that, when you're caretaking, you have to learn to trust people, because otherwise, then you isolate yourself. If you believe that only you can do it, you'll end up not taking help from your family, peers, friends, and that can land you into a depression, or you can feel that you're not doing it correctly, or the other person is not doing it correctly, and that's where you can land yourself into trouble. Because for me, like I couldn't complete it, that support is a very important aspect. I'm also taking care of four young, not young, sorry, super senior ladies. They're 85 plus, and there are four of them, and they are all they're all wives of very senior doctors who've all gone. And it's amazing to see how they are meeting once a week, playing cards. They have their issues, they have their problems with each other. They've known each other for 70 years odd, but they're still going strong. And I'm part of that group where I play with them once a week. And it's very refreshing, very, very refreshing.
Thank you for sharing that, Neeta, because I think this is, we're coming to an end of the webinar. And I think if there's one overarching tip that I think we need to remember as caregivers, it's about the importance of building a support network. That
Yes.
could be a support network that includes professional support, support for the physical aspects of care. It includes the support for the emotional aspects of care for the patient, but also for the person who's providing the care, as well as the social aspects, and that building that support system is absolutely critical for you for taking part in this caregiving journey. And today we're really lucky to have caregivers of people who have lived with dementia, so older adults, as well as Neeta, who's been caring for a child for several years. Very different conditions, but when we look at caregiving, um, I think through the discussion, it's quite clear that some of the challenges are quite similar, and some of the things that you need to do are also quite similar. And I think that's one of the things that, particularly at Samvedna, what we really emphasize is the importance of seeking help when you feel you cannot cope with the caregiving responsibilities that you have. Everybody has their good days and their bad days. And it's very important to recognize that. And that's where the support system comes in. So Samvedna is really a support system for people. So do reach out to us if you would
Can
like
I just add a
sort
10
of support.
second,
Sure,
10 second
please go
point?
ahead.
I have 10 seconds to you. I just wanted to say that there are two things which have absolutely no place in caregiving. Absolutely no place. One is guilt and the other is embarrassment. Okay.
Absolutely correct.
No
Yes, I
place
agree.
in caregiving. So I just wanted to just jump.
Absolutely. So no place for guilt, no place for embarrassment, place for love, trust, and support. And I think with that, I'm going to request Navya's to just share a link in the chat for your feedback, just to also let you know that I'm really glad that we've had this conversation today. This will be available on our YouTube channel if you'd like to share this with people who've been unable to join us today. Caregiving is, all of you as caregivers will know that it's hard to set a routine. So one of the reasons why we share this and would like to share, have it out there on the YouTube channel is so that people can listen to it in their own time. We recognize that those are challenges for people at Samvedna. Okay, I think before we end, Shivani, would you like to share something?
No, that was an error. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Okay, sure, no problem. But we also have a tool, the MAP tool, on which you can actually evaluate your own caregiver stress. And this link is in the chat. We would encourage you to put this, share this link with other people so that they can actually do this as a self-assessment. Sometimes it's hard also for caregivers to understand whether they're experiencing stress and whether this is the time point at which they need to seek some support or not. We spoke about there being no place for guilt and embarrassment. We at Samvedna, we host these webinars to really with the effort of creating public awareness and with the aim of breaking the stigma about these kind of conversations, about taking help, about understanding that none of us are perfect and that there are times at which we need to seek support and help, and that can only help us care for someone better. So do share the link, take the assessment, share it with others so that they can evaluate their own caregiver stress. And if you'd like to be part of our support group network, please do reach out to us. Navya, if we could request you to just share the email ID on the chat, drop us an email at any time. And thank you so much to all our panelists and all the people who've participated and joined us today for this webinar. And we will be holding these webinars on a regular basis to have more conversations with people who have been through a caregiving journey. So if you're interested to participate in any of these webinars, please do drop us a mail as well. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jayashree.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.